welcome to False Flag, the podcast made to cut through the propaganda and doublespeak and empower a grassroots activism, and most importantly, to take back a government of and for the people.
All right, so on this podcast for False Flag, we're going to be talking about your rights. A lot of people don't understand your rights, and we're going to narrow it down. If you go to the ACLU website, the American Civil Liberties Union, it is aclu.org, and they have several sections on there about know your rights. There are several different rights that you can learn about, like if you're pulled over by police at a DUI stop or something, what are your rights and all that. What we're going to do this time, since our podcast is trying to get people plugged into getting democracy put back into the hands of the people again, we're going to talk about demonstrating or protesting and what your rights are. Now, number one, on their website, it talks about, can your free speech be restricted, even if it's controversial? And their answer is no. The First Amendment prohibits restrictions based on the content of speech. However, this does not mean that the Constitution completely protects all types of speech in every circumstance. Police and government officials are allowed to place certain narrowly drawn lines, such as the time, place, and manner restrictions on the exercise of your First Amendment rights. For example, a permit is required for large group using public parks, or limits on the loudness of sound amplifiers. Any such restriction must apply to all speech regardless of point of view. But no one can restrict you, no matter how controversial it is. Such as the fruitcakes from Kansas that the Baptist Church that, Westboro Baptist Church,
yeah.
KKKs are allowed to march. The American Nazis are allowed to march.
A little sidebar to that, though. The guy that on the Westboro Baptist Church, he was a well-known attorney, and he made a lot of money by suing people.
Oh, yeah. He was actually a civil rights lawyer.
Yeah, which is hilarious, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people, they would go in and block his march. He would sue them, so he financed everything. He's dead now, though. He went to be with Jesus. Okay.
Where can I engage in free speech activity? Generally, all types of expressions are constitutionally protected in traditional public forums, such as streets, sidewalks, and parks, which we even mentioned during when we were talking about the Occupy movement, the judge that would not rule against the Occupy people at the city park because he said they're peaceful, they're not causing any problems, and America was based upon the type of protest that, they're doing. That's the basis of what this foundation of our country was formed upon. So the judge got it. So, sometimes you can do that. And so public locations that the government has opened up for unrestricted public speech, such as plazas or front of government buildings, are allowed. Now, like, I've done protests at the state capitol. You do have to do a permit only because scheduling, so that they can control the schedule.
How much does the permit cost?
It's free.
Oh, you just have to apply for it?
Yeah.
It's just schedule. Yeah.
Okay.
And most everyone does it. And even though I was protesting how stupid our legislatures were, I got the permit to do it, So, I mean, it's easy to do. What about private property? Well, funny thing is, owners of private property have the right to limit whatever. You can't walk onto private property and hold a protest. They can say you're trespassing and have you arrested. However, If you own the property next to them, nothing is preventing you from setting up a loudspeaker and a megaphone, and so I mean, do you have to get a permit to engage in free speech? Not usually. However, certain type of events require permits, such as a march or a parade that does not stay on the sidewalk, a large rally requiring the use of sound amplification devices. After the Black Lives Matter protest that was in Dallas, and they had the person who was shooting at cops from the parking garage, who was not a part of Black Lives Matter. He was not part of it, but it happened during the deal. The following weekend in my hometown was a huge deal, and within a matter of days it was put together, and the local police understood the need for this to be done and cooperated and helped. And it's there are times in our society when you will see that even the police will protect your free speech, and especially in something like that, to prove that Black Lives Matter, which they do. A large rally requiring sound amplification or security, or could pose a problem for a local city or something. If you had 10,000 people gather in a small space and it was a highly controversial deal, the police would be called in. They could shut you down, only because, fear of a riot or something. So that's why you want to get the permit. If you get the permit and you go through the loop, you jump through the hoops, they'll work with you and protect your rights, because you have a right, just like the March for Monsanto. March against Monsanto. Sorry, March against Monsanto. That was held in a public place, and we did march around the downtown area, and we stayed on the sidewalk because we didn't have a permit. But no one stopped us, and we actually had some police drive by, and they knew they couldn't stop us because we were on the sidewalks.
And obeying the signs.
Yes.
Traffic lights.
Correct. So if you don't want to do the permit, you're allowed to be on the sidewalks. You must obey the traffic and pedestrian signals. Your activity is constitutionally protected even without a permit. Marchers may be required to allow enough space on the sidewalk for normal pedestrian traffic and may not maliciously obstruct or detain passerbyers. What about distributing leaflets? And if you guys want to jump in, I mean, you guys are being awful silent. So,
yeah, I'd like to interject one thing. And what you have said since the very beginning might not be entirely true under certain circumstances, because there is a thing now in the last few years called the free speech zone.
Yeah, that is frightening.
And
that started under Obama.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure what triggers the need for a free speech zone, but it may have something to do with the Secret Service. They
set up rings, or like Obama was going to go to a local, right down like 20 or 45 minutes from me. Obama was going to set up, and I'm like, well, that'd be neat to go see the president. He doesn't get that close on typically. Started calling around. It was an invitation-only event. And if you were to go up there, they had, what you said, the zones of influence. They won't tell you where they're at.
No, they're about a half a mile down the road is where they're at.
And if you protest in that area, and mind you, they're not like, this is like little signs or whatever. They can detain you, question you. Yeah, they may not charge you, but you're still going to go through the process of...
You're not going to be able to exercise your First Amendment.
Right.
There. That's whether you get arrested or not, you're not able to exercise your First Amendment right unless it's in the zone that they designate.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not exactly sure, like I said, what constitutes the need for.
Well, it was, and for the record,
well,
for
U.S. courts decided that the government can regulate the time, place, or manner, but not the content.
Right.
Not exactly. The content.
The place. Yeah, so they could, it's a zone. Yeah,
you
so
know,
they can,
and some of it makes sense, such as you can't have a large protest within the sidewalks of the White House. You know, and I think in today's age that makes a hell of a lot of sense because that fence is there.
No, okay, I'm gonna. This is just for just general consumption, whatever. Is 20, 30 years ago, you could walk right up to the White House, and then they started pushing the fence. Mm-hmm. Now the fence is what, I don't know,
pretty far out.
It's pretty far out. They want to go an additional 18 blocks. Supposedly, there's full-time snipers on the roof at all times. There's anti-aircraft in the area, anti-aircraft missiles area. At what point do you think you're not governing correctly? No, that is a serious thing. I mean, if your populace is so out to knock you down, maybe you should look at the reasons they're that way instead of just trying to protect yourself with the never.
I have a problem with 18 blocks out. I don't have an issue when you are 150 yards.
Most of these free speech zones are very far away.
Yeah.
From the.
Well, I mean, during the Democratic National Convention, city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, way off. Yeah. You could protest. It was on some back street somewhere that no one would ever see you.
Right.
But yeah, you were more than willing to do it right there.
So these things that the ACLU was saying are your rights, may not be entirely correct and accurate.
Well, I'm sure they update their website pretty well. So I mean,
well, they did, but they didn't emphasize that. Yeah, they can't regulate the content, but they can sure regulate the place.
Sure. And the ACLU is there. You know, I was lucky when I did my protest at the state. I was in touch with the ACLU. The ACLU actually spoke at my rally. But, you know, if they would have tried to shut us down, the ACLU was already on hand. I did another protest a couple of weeks later, and, you know, the director, you know, contacted me and said, hey, we're not going to attend this, but here's my number. If they try to shut you down, call me, you know. So, I mean, you know, the ACLU, it's always good if you have a local chapter to include them in the beginning so that, you know, if it does get out of hand on anything, you can get, you know, find out how they can help you. Can you distribute leaflets and other literature on public sidewalks without a permit? The answer is yes. Do you have a right to be on public sidewalks? Yes. What to do if you get stopped by police? Stay calm. Be polite. Don't run, obviously. Don't argue, resist, or obstruct the police, even if you're innocent, or even if you believe the police are violating your rights. In some states, you must give your name if asked to identify yourself, but you do not have to provide an ID or other paperwork. Make sure to keep your hands where police can see them. Point out that you are not disrupting anyone else's activity, and that the First Amendment, and once again, we're talking specifically about your rights to protest and to gather. We're not talking about being pulled over for a DUI, you know. We're talking today, and this part of their website is about protesting. So you want to make sure your hands are where police can see them. Point out that you're not disrupting anyone else's activity and that the First Amendment protects your actions. Ask if you're free to leave. If an officer says yes, calmly and silently walk away. And I've seen videos to where people that have, embraced the police with their cell phones or video cameras, they always ask, am I being detained? Am I being detained? Am I being detained? Can I leave?
Mm-hmm.
I think you better be a lawyer when you go into there, because there's a difference between a detention and arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they can detain you without arresting you. So that might be a bad question to ask.
And that goes back to the free...
Well, it doesn't say detained. It says if I get stopped by the police.
But see, that goes back to the free speech zones. You may not be arrested.
But you can be. Yeah, anybody.
But yeah, you can be detained for like 72 hours?
Well, they can in most states, they can detain you while they do an investigation, which might mean asking your name.
Mm-hmm.
Just asking you some questions. That's an investigation. They can.
Well, you can give him your name. You don't have to produce an ID.
Yeah, but the thing is, they can.
But if you say the wrong name, they can arrest
you. It better be your name.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can lie to you, but you can't lie to them.
Yeah.
But they can detain anyone, anywhere, to conduct an investigation, which could be as simple as asking your name.
Well, and I know this from years of doing protests and different things, that if a cop begins to harass or impede upon my civil rights, my first question is, I need your supervisor. I need to speak to your supervisor. And they have to call their captain. Now, in today's age, you have the ability even to use your phone, call 911, and tell the operator, I'm being forced, to being detained by a police officer, my rights are being violated. I feel threatened right now, and I need a supervisor. I need another pair of eyes over here. Because I think your officer is out of line. And you're able to do that. And they'll dispatch another cop, and they'll dispatch his captain, or someone above him.
I hope it's not his brother.
A lot of people ask, can I be searched? You never have to consent to a search of yourself or your belongings.
Okay, but by saying I don't want to be searched, that's consent. That can be considered consent. Not consent. That can be considered probable cause for a search. If they show up at your door, we need to come inside. Well, I don't want you to come inside. Wait right here. That's enough to get a search warrant.
Okay, but that'll give you time to call a lawyer. You don't have to open the door. There are times that police have knocked on people's door asking for a certain person. Is this person here? And they go, I'm not going to open my door, but I will send that named person out. Please hold. And the person comes out and the cops throw them down, cuff them, and send them away. But they didn't bang in the door, You never have to consent. Now, they can pat down your clothing if they suspect you have a weapon, and they may search you after an arrest. You should not physically resist, but you have the right to refuse consent for any further search. If you do explicitly consent, it can affect you later in court. So even if they do continue to search you, and someone's filming you, and you are saying, I don't give consent, let them go ahead and search you. Because there's someone with a video there, and your lawyer can then present that, and I guarantee you a judge is going to throw that case out because you didn't give them consent.
This happened in the local town here. Somebody was arrested for a completely different thing. He was driving the company van, and they went through that van from one end to the other. And the owner was just screaming bloody murder. It's like you had no right to do that. I don't know how it ended up, but You know,
well, thank you for bringing something up that we don't know how it ended.
It's okay. Well, in this local thing, there are lots of things like that just kind of just go away in the news.
No, I'm being a smart ass. What to do if you feel like your rights have been violated? Remember, the street is not the place to challenge police misconduct.
The hotter the water, the better.
Let me restate that.
Okay.
The street is not the place to challenge police misconduct. Don't physically resist officers or threaten to file a complaint. As soon as you can, write down everything you can remember, including the officer's badge and patrol car numbers, which agency the officers were with, and any other. Then get contact information for witnesses. If you're injured, take photographs of your injuries, but seek medical attention first. Once you have this information, you can file a written complaint with the agency's Internal Affairs Division or Civilian Complaint Board. In many cases, you can file a complaint anonymously if you wish. You can also seek the assistance of an attorney or the ACLU. Can a government impose a financial charge to exercise your free rights? Some local governments have required a fee as a condition on larger groups exercising their free speech rights, such an application fee, security deposits for cleanup, or charges to cover overtime police costs. I do know that during the presidential election, when the different presidential candidates came into town, they had to file for a permit to hold a rally. They had to pay overtime for police, so I mean, it's, that happens. Now, quite frankly, it was interesting. A group that I belong to, the Democratic Socialists of America, asked many of its chapters to help their local CWA, which was Communication Workers of America, who were physically protesting and on strike from Verizon back east. But all these other states that didn't have, a CWA, or the strike wasn't going on in their area because the strike was specific to the New York region, but it brought more attention to what was going on. And I remember locally, I went to the police station a week in advance, filed the paperwork to have a strike, and it was granted. And when we showed up, and we had signs, and we were in front of their door, but we could not prevent customers going in. But a lot of customers were older people, and they knew better than to cross a picket line, and they chose not to go in. And the store manager called the local police and said, me and my staff are threatened. Can you send a police car out? And said, no, they have a permit. They have a right to be there. I'll drive by in case, call me back if something violent happens. But we've already talked to them, and they have every right being there, and they're going to be peaceful. And, I did. I talked to the police chief, and he knew what I was doing, and he supported it. Because there is a police union. They understand the value.
What about the law? It was in Arizona. They were trying to pass that if damage is caused by protesters, not only the protesters, but the organizers of the protest.
Yeah, that's recent. That's been within the last few months.
I thought it was just weeks.
That is frightening.
That is, yeah. I thought that was here, too.
Yes and no.
Okay. You are a peaceful protest, but it's something that the powers that be do not like. All they have to do is send some black hooded, not black, as an ethnic
provocateur.
Send a black hooded figure in, a provocateur, bust things up, start a riot, and guess what? Your thing is bankrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, but I have talked to some attorneys on this, And here's the deal. If you are known as the organizer and you have a name and a sheet of who all is your people, and there is video, and the provocateur is not part of your membership or part of your sheet, then it's easily proven that it's not you that did this. And they'll go after that person then.
The guy joins 3 weeks beforehand, or he's a mole, or because that happens too. That happens in public events. They have like
it hasn't played out yet.
Operas and plays.
It hasn't played out yet in a protest, so we don't know.
Audience
but it's something to watch. It's something to be concerned about, and it's something. I'm going to wait until it actually happens.
Well, did they actually pass the law?
I don't know. That's
Well, thanks for bringing something up that we don't know about.
Yeah, well, you just waited for that, didn't you? You waited for that one.
Thanks for just letting us hang out there.
I think sometimes on issues like that, I don't want to be a knee-jerk reactionist.
Hey, put it in the comment section if anybody knows out there.
Yeah. If you do, put it there. But I'm not a knee-jerk reactionist. There was a bill passed in our state, that was going to go after the Native Americans that wanted to protest against the pipeline. Mm-hmm. And the bill was very punitive. And it was meant to be punitive. And there was a clause in there that they wanted enacted that you cannot protest against an infrastructure of the state. And since the oil and gas industry is such a infrastructure in this state, they were going to prevent any protest against the oil and gas industry. But it also had to deal with private property. It's not going to stop a protest being held on the sidewalk, being held, getting a permit and holding it somewhere. But we already have laws that I can't walk into someone else's land with 300 people and do something.
Well,
but on the other hand,
they want to avoid the North Dakota thing.
But on the other hand, if that pipeline is being pushed across federal Indian lands, and it's going to go across that, if the construction start on private property, we all know from the 60s and 70s the anti-nuke people that chained themselves to the fences of the nuclear, or chained themselves to a bulldozer, that is still free speech, and chaining yourself to a bulldozer, you're not impeding upon anyone's life, liberty, but you are impeding upon the oil and gas companies, money, because they still have to pay everyone, though they can't work that day. But I can tell you, there are certain causes that I think the Supreme Court will say are worth challenging on private property. So as I said, it's not been played out yet. Yes, these bills have been introduced in 18 states. And we're just waiting to see what happens. And then if it does get signed into law, then there are groups that are waiting to see how it's played out.
I'm sure the ACLU would be pretty interested in.
No,
I've got a tangent on this. It's not really exactly on topic, but it has to do with the oil and gas thing. Obama canceled the Keystone Pipeline. Mm-hmm. Remember? But that was, in my opinion, that was only because everybody thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win. That was going to let her reinstate the pipeline to look good to big business. Now, I have many of my customers work for the oil and gas industry, and they work on the pipeline. They never stopped building it, not one bit.
Oh, no.
They've been building it for the past 7-8 years.
It's almost complete.
It's almost complete, yes.
Yeah.
And when Trump came in and said, "Oh, I okayed the pipeline," it never was banned. It never was stopped. That was just a political theater.
Do counter demonstrators have free speech rights? And the answer to that is yes. Although counter demonstrators should not be allowed to physically disrupt the event they're protesting, they do have a right to be present and voice their displeasure. Police usually permit the two, but they keep the two antagonistic groups separated, but should allow them to be within the general vicinity of one another. And, during the Black Lives Matter protest held downtown, there happened to be a handful, and I mean a handful, less than 5, that were across the street with their Confederate flag.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't disrupt the 6,000 that were there.
Yeah.
They didn't. Now, the interesting thing was there was an African American male in overalls waving the Confederate flag. And, I can guarantee you there was some Black Lives Matter protesters over there basically just going, what the hell? The police came over. It didn't get out of hand. Tension was high, but no one was threatening each other. There was just a loud discussion going on. And the police allowed it because, they were discussing very passionately. But within 5 minutes, the 5 people shut down and went because they feared. But they didn't fear from what Black Lives Matter did. They just their own fear.
When the Nazi flag, Confederate flag, all those things. I think we kind of do ourselves a disservice by kind of putting them on a pedestal. If your Black Lives Matter, you should print those up on every hat you've got. Own it. Take the power away from it is what I'm getting at. But I don't know.
I've even heard some pundits, and it is pretty funny. The white people that want to fight for the Confederate flag, is funny in itself because the Confederacy lost. So, what's your history? Your history that my side lost, we're losers?
Well, you hear my accent?
But
wait a minute.
But see, you're also glorifying a past that never was. The alt-right people right now, that they're embracing Jane Austen because Jane Austen's very proper. Everybody has their roles, and if you're this way, then you belong to this social status. This way, well, these are the mud races, and they belong down there.
It's just Hinduism with your caste system.
Your caste system, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, since you brought it up, I feel compelled to say that I'm from Georgia. I'm an old guy, and I can tell you that I spoke to people who were alive in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
My great-grandparents were children in that war.
It's amazing, yeah.
And they spoke to me. I've got it firsthand from a child. One of the things that that was not entirely about slavery.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a lot of states' rights, and that's what we're fighting about. That's what we're discussing right now.
Mm-hmm.
States' rights, as opposed to strong federal government, and the whole government.
And the government's getting stronger and
then.
stronger and stronger.
The federal government changed then. It's completely different now than it was before, and that's what the Confederacy was fighting, this strong federalism for support of states' rights. And if one of those rights was the right to have slaves, I'm not, I can't defend that. But that was not the only right they were fighting for.
Yeah, they're imposing the North's ideals on the South.
Yeah, and so, the Confederate, to people who understand that and can get around racism, that is a different symbol. Yes, the Confederacy lost the war, but they tried to uphold states' rights, which is what people should be doing today.
But okay, and I don't have a problem with that.
And the Ku Klux Klan and the racists took this symbol and made it their own, but it didn't start out like that.
No, but the ones that we see in the news
are about racism.
Yeah.
But what is the news?
Yeah,
it's propaganda.
It's propaganda.
So
it's the same thing. Like,
but let's be honest, our shows are propaganda.
Like, every time they have a flood somewhere, they don't pick the middle-aged businessman who is very well insured and has built levees around his property. No, they go down right next to the creek, and you can kind of see the top of the mobile home. And they're like, "We're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild next year." They find those people because you want to feel superior.
Aliens have never appeared in a major metropolis. It's always out in the rural part where they are uneducated.
So I understand that a lot of people, most people, probably 95% of the people in this country believe that this flag is all about racism, but there are some people who don't believe that way. It's about something else to some of us, and I'm one of those people.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's wrap this. Let's wrap this show up, but let's record the next show talking about states' rights. Because we keep hearing this every so often in political discussions and things, and let's educate people on this issue because obviously there's some things I don't know about it, and I would like to hear your thoughts on it.
I got a quick shout out to the podcast listener there. This is kind of another tangent. There is a program called Stuff You Should Know, and there is one of the last episodes they've had as a recording. It's talking about the Black Panthers, and what you think you know about the Black Panthers is not correct.
Oh, they were doing community service stuff.
They were an amazing group.
Yeah.
But Hoover, I can't remember, J. Edgar Hoover, and the government,
the cross-dresser,
were terrified of these people, and they rolled out the propaganda machine full force.
Yeah, but we all know too that Hoover was part of the corruption problem because he had a secret file on people.
That is my argument against the NSA.
Yeah.
I've got a relative that works for the NSA, and he gets so mad. It's like, no, everything we do is for the good, and you don't know how bad it is, and it's gonna. We've got.
Hello, does he not know who Snowden is?
We've got to do more. We've got to do more. And I'm like, this is what happens every single time. The reason that our founding fathers wrote the thing the way they did is they know human nature. Human nature is not any different today than it was 300 years ago.
They'd already seen this stuff back then.
They'd already seen it, yes.
This is not nothing here is new.
And a lot of people don't realize that, because I've seen this on the internet. George Washington said you can't trust everything you see on the internet.
Right.
That's true.
I'd heard this thing about TV too, but it probably is the internet. All right. It probably was the internet.
I read that on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah.
This is False Flag. Join us next time when we do get more into state rights and what all that means and the fighting for state rights versus federal rights and, all this deal. I'm going to be educated because obviously these two guys know a lot more about it than I do. So join us. Thanks for listening. As always, check out our podcast, get other people to listen to it, and more importantly, get involved in the grassroots movement for progressive change in America. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into False Flag, the grassroots activism podcast where together we can change the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.